Hey guys, it's Dan. Welcome back. I have what I'm not even comfortable calling this an unboxing in quotation marks, because what I have for you is a single sprue of Wargames Atlantic's Afghan Warriors kit. That set is entirely comprised of just this sprue. There's no command sprue, there's no bases in the box. Really all I'm missing is the box and a lot more sprues. However, the reason I have this, as I do from time to time, is I sometimes from online sellers will pick up a single sprue because what I'm really after are bits. Like I don't need an entire box of miniatures. I just need some bits, maybe to add to an existing unit, to try some kit bashing, etc. So that's what I've done in this case. I actually picked up a couple of individual sprues from different sets, so I might do something similar with those. But what I have in this particular case, I have a unit of 24 Afghan warriors that I needed some more like turbaned heads, some more firearms for. So I picked up a single sprue because I thought that there's enough bits on this that I'd be able to help kind of kit bash that unit a little bit better. So at the end of this video, I'll bring those in. I'll show you what I was able to achieve by blending in the bits off the sprue. But in the meantime, when I have an intact sprue here, I thought let's go through and we'll take a look at it together. So maybe I'll call this like a sprue review. I don't know. It's essentially just like the prior unboxing videos I've done. I don't have a whole box or a whole box's worth of contents. So straight out of the gates, we can see again, this is Wargames Atlantic, and the sprue is smaller than what we've been used to. In fact, I've got another of the sprue I've got is actually their SAS Commandos that I'm going to kit bash with the Expeditionary Force. And the Expeditionary Force box, that British Expeditionary Force box, we saw that sprue is about the same size. So I'll review this one separately, but I just wanted to bring this in as a point of comparison because I had it just right over here to my right. But you can see that this sprue is half the size of this one, right? And this box contains, there's actually 40 miniatures in this box. So this box actually contains 8 of this sprue. So I imagine from a layout standpoint, it's just doubled over. It's the exact same thing. And you've got 8 total of this frame to make 40 bodies. Now 40 bodies, for those paying attention, you might know that that's 10 more than a lot of Wargames Atlantic kits come with. And that's very cool, especially because as we take a close look at the sprue here, you can see one point of contention I've had in the past is with these crouching bodies, which I think is a great addition to have from a modeling standpoint, but not everybody might want to have this crouching pose for so many of their miniatures. So I think that having 40 miniatures in this box is a great solution to that, because it's very hard to complain about having this crouching body when if you eliminate this entirely, you've actually got more miniatures. It'd be 32 miniatures than you'd have in a normal set of Wargames Atlantic. So I think that's a great addition that they've made to this particular box. So 40 miniatures, again, it's a smaller sprue than normal, but I would actually say that in terms of bits, it's still pretty jam-packed. And I'll go through a breakdown here in just a moment. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the contents here of this sprue. So again, back to bodies. They say that this kit can represent, it's designed as like a 19th century kit, but they say that you can go back as early as 1700s, like 18th century. But I actually think they're selling themselves short with that, because these bodies, and if you just eliminate the firearms entirely, and call maybe some of these cartridge boxes just a pouch of some kind, like these I think could pass for medieval sculpts. Just throw some shields and spears on them, or bows and arrows, what have you. So I think this is very, just like we saw with the Citizens of Rome box, I think there's a lot of potential here in terms of potentially blending with other sets. But the sculpting, as we've seen from them, is very detailed. I would say actually, in terms of flash, I see more flash on this than I've seen on their more recent kits. So you can see like there's a mold line there, and I don't have a problem with this at all. I'm just pointing it out because I've been so impressed with the newer Wargames Atlantic stuff for having just basically 0 mold lines, but I do see a little bit of cleanup that's necessary here, but that's really not much in the scheme of things. It's a really cool sculpting. A couple of places where you see some accessories sculpted on, which is cool. So there's like a scabbard there. Yeah, as I mentioned, a couple of cartridge pouches, another scabbard here. Yeah, scabbard, and then some daggers, what have you. But I think very convincing, good blend of pose variety. Onto heads. We have, there are actually a total of 12 heads in this particular box. You can see many of them are turbaned, some of them have beards, some are clean shaven, some of them have masks over their face, so a really good variety, some great expressions in here. This one looks especially menacing to me. Again, as with some of the other kits we've seen, some of them are facing one direction and some in another. So these heads are actually the main reason I picked up this box, because the 24 or so odd miniatures I have, a lot of them have heads that I didn't think really would pass for Arab warriors. So that's why I picked up this box, or excuse me, this sprue, is to help kitbash with my existing militia, as I'm using them as. So the other interesting point about the box is, or the box, but the sprue, is the weapon arms that it comes with. So there's 4 sword arms, and as we've talked about in the past, I would have been happier if it included 5, just so that all 5 could potentially be armed with swords, though I guess there's less of an argument that this guy should have a sword in his hand, since he's clearly in some kind of firing pose. However, again, the box, if you pick up the box, includes 40 miniatures, so you could disregard this pose entirely, equip all of these guys with swords if you like. So it's really hard for me to criticize them for that. So 4 of these swords, there's one push dagger here, which is again a neat addition, I think, especially with this head, which I said I find to be kind of scary looking. It would make a good assassin miniature with a sword in one hand and a dagger in the other. And then of course there's quite a few rifles and muskets. So in terms of arms holding firearms, there are actually 5. So there's this one here and then this one. The breakdown is there are 3 that are Jazales. So the ones that have the curved stocks here. So there's one that's being held in hand and the other 2 are in firing poses, or one's in a at ready pose. And then there's one, what I'm going to call a brown bass musket here. And there's one Martini Henry rifle down here in terms of weapons that are in hands. And one interesting thing that I noticed, it's not a huge deal, especially at this scale, but you might have spotted when I flipped the sprue over that some of the barrels, maybe even all the barrels, are too short at the end. These should be connecting up to where the firing mechanism is. But all of them, I assume it has something to do with the fact that maybe they weren't able to print the the flintlock with the barrel coming all the way over. I'm not entirely sure. So if that bothers you, it's just something to be aware of. But again, I think at the scale, especially if you're looking at it like this, you're not going to be able to tell that. But it's just something that I spotted when I was going through it. But yeah, I think otherwise the sculpting was really cool. In terms of accessories, there are 4 shields. You can see them here and down here. So again, this would pair with your sword arms if you fancy. And they look like they're the same design as shield, but I think they're convincing enough. And there are 2 scimitar scabbards. And remember, some of these already have some sword scabbards sculpted onto the bodies. And then there are actually some loose firearms as well. So there's, again, another Jazale here. And then there's this one that some kind of land pattern musket. I don't know what this flared end is. Some kind of carbine, I don't know, but it's cool looking. Again, the same kind of issue with the barrel being cut off behind the firing mechanism. And then there's another Martini Henry rifle down here. So a neat set. I know there's not a whole lot to review on this, but again, the box, if you pick it up, it's going to come with 8 of these sprues for 40 total miniatures. No bases, but there's plenty to play with here. And I think overall this is another good set from Wargames Atlantic. So what I'm going to do now, as I mentioned, I've got a whole unit that I want to blend all these bits into. So I'm going to try to do that. Actually, I'm going to see if I can use every single bit that's on the sprue, and then we'll look at the end result together. And here we go. So I've kind of organized things in a crazy way, but I'll talk you through it. So you can see I've stripped the sprue off. Once again, they went with the numbering system for left arm and right arm, which made it really easy to match up, especially with the guns, which arm was supposed to go with which weapon. So very cool. What I did, again, I had 24 miniatures. Some of them I scrapped because looking back at some of the conversions I did, I didn't find them very convincing. So I still have 24 with the 5 that I just added in. And in terms of like poses and sculpting, you can see these are really, really, really good. I didn't do any cleanup work yet. I'll go through with an X-Acto knife and clean these up once I'm done with the video here, but they went together really easily. I think that the sculpting is great. So these 5 over here are ones that I just built totally from the kit. There were a couple of issues, so I don't want to say issues because it's really not an issue, but it's just something to note. So the heads on these, instead of being that the neck is mounted to the body, in this kit, the necks are on the heads. And the only issue I found with that is like with some of the firing poses, like this one here, I found that I would want his head to be further down, and I could do that from like cutting. And that would have, I think, been easier if the neck was attached to the body, and I could then kind of angle the head slightly differently. So that was the only issue I found with it, but otherwise I think the sculpting is really fantastic. I really like the poses. I was surprised actually at some of the dynamic poses I was able to achieve, even with the torsos being attached to the legs as they are. Yeah, this is really great sculpting. In terms of scale, something that you might be interested in. So most of the stuff over here, again, some was from my bits box, what have you. I had picked up a handful of just loose miniatures on eBay. I do that from time to time, especially if I've been drinking bourbon. So I had a number of models that are actually from the Perry kit. The Perry Miniatures has a Afghan tribesman kit that covers the same subject matter. And what I was curious about is scale between those two, and you can see that they are pretty close. This is Perry on the left-hand side, Wargames Atlantic on the right-hand side. And dare I say, I don't want to pass judgment. I love my Perrys. I don't want to pass judgment on the kit, having just a handful of models to go by. But I actually think the sculpting on the Wargames Atlantic stuff is slightly crisper. And again, I can't say much more about it because again, like that's a gripping beast head on this guy, so it's not like it's a totally Perry miniature that I'm comparing it to. And forgive me again, I fantasy Wargames, so I have some creative liberties when it comes to what things are equipped with. But just looking at just the bodies in terms of like the folds in the robes and whatnot, I think that the Wargames Atlantic models are a little bit crisper, which it's not something I'm used to saying about Perry sculpts. But again, Perry stuff still looks great, still Perry miniatures. But just something I noted as I was putting these together. These ones on the left were ones that I had previously built. I didn't do anything with them this time around, but you can see I'm making some generic looking Middle Eastern militia in a fantasy setting. So these are the ones I'd already put together. These ones in the middle had been put together, but I then added in some bits, so like some of the new heads that I got. You can actually see this is from a gripping beast late Roman, and again I think I'll just paint them up to make it look somewhat correct. Same thing here, I just added in the scabbard and a new head. These are actually Victrix Carthaginians, or from the Carthaginian kit. Just the robed bodies. And I actually think I'm going to take some of the Citizens of Rome miniatures and kind of blend them into here as well. So anyway, another really cool kit, some really neat accessories and bits that came with this one. And I think it's another set worth picking up if this is a topic that you're interested in. So as ever, thanks for hanging out with me. Again, I'm going to have at least one other sprue review like this for you. And I've got some painting material coming up and some other things for you. So thanks again, and until next time, happy gaming.